Hi, this is Senator Malcolm Roberts at the House of Graham Hood, Captain Graham Hood. Can I call you
Former,
Captain?
former captain.
Former Captain Graham Hood. Who's a pilot for how many years, mate?
53 years a pilot, 32 years a captain with Qantas.
And an inquisitive mind. We received, both of us received many questions about what people call chemtrails.
Hmm.
So we've had that in recent years. So I just want to ask Graham some questions, and I also want to put some points to Graham, and he can challenge me on them.
Sure. Let's do it.
So,
Can I say something before we do?
where you go, mate? It's your house.
I just want to say, look, the material that we're going to present may upset some people, but whose whole life seems predicated on the existence of chemtrails.
Yeah.
And I want to state right up front, as I've done 1,000 times, that I totally believe that they are weather engineering. I totally believe that weather modification programs have been going on for a long time and they're developing it in certain ways. But when I see people showing me a photograph of something that I see as normal in the sky, they don't see it as normal, but I spent half a century up there. I think that there's too much fear in the world that we live in now, and that it governs everything. It makes us all way too cynical. And I believe that people who are fighting for our freedoms are as guilty as perpetrating fear narratives on others to control them as on the other side. So I want to make it clear. I'm not here to convince you that what you're thinking is wrong.
Same here.
All I want to do is give you an explanation to ease your burden a little bit, because the real enemy is out there. The real enemy is let's face it, we're starting to see now a communist takeover of the world. That's clear that that's happening. And all these things are distractions. So we've got to make sure we keep our eye on the ball. So the reason I'm going through this again for the 100th time is because it needs to be said, because there's too many people who are anxious to the point of distraction over what's going on in the sky. And I just want to add my two bobs worth, and I want anybody watching this to make up your own minds and play it how you see fit. That's fine. I'm not here to control you. I'm not here to persuade you otherwise. I'm just here to tell you what I know.
What we want to do is stop people trying to control the population.
That's exactly right.
We're not in favor of control. We don't want to replace someone else's attempted control with our control. We just want to present some concepts for people to think about.
Absolutely.
And you took the words right out of my mouth. I'm going to use notes because we've got a lot of material. It's pretty comprehensive, and Hoodie doesn't know what I've got. He hasn't read them, so I'm going to pop them on him. But we've had a few constituents, and I'm going to not read them, but I'm going to go through the points one by one on my list, because that'll be the best way of making it comprehensive. Now, a few constituents, as I said, have been concerned about these and have contacted us. And mate, when you see what governments have done with tens of thousands of homicides in this country alone, with toxic injections forcibly injected into people, no real choice, and they're trying to kill people, it's willful ignorance or it's deliberate, but they're homicides regardless. Tens of thousands. Who wouldn't be scared that when you see something in the sky, it's not the government trying to pollute your lives? Who wouldn't be?
I am 100 times more skeptical than I was 5 years ago about things. And that's natural. Healthy skepticism is good. But we've got to make sure we manage that, because otherwise they get control over us in much easier ways than we would let them normally.
And that fear, as Hoodie said, and I agree, is understandable. Let me also point out the Bader-Meinhof effect. The Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, this is a definition I'll read out, known as the frequency illusion, is a cognitive bias where something recently learned or suddenly noticed seems to appear everywhere, even though its actual frequency hasn't changed. So this perception is due to your brain's increased attention and awareness towards that specific element. It's like getting another car, whether it's secondhand or new, you get a different model car. All of a sudden you start seeing that car everywhere.
Exactly.
Before you didn't see it.
Exactly. Michelle's got plantar fasciitis at the moment, which is, a tearing of muscle structure under the foot. I'd never heard of that until now, and now everyone I meet's got plantar fasciitis. I mean, and I'm noticing it because they always had it, but I'm now noticing it because people are talking about it.
Before it just didn't register.
Didn't register,
I'm also concerned, on the other hand, Hoodie, that many people in our communities cannot see the things that I've seen for many, many years. The UN Lima Declaration, which gutted our manufacturing. UN Kyoto Protocol, which gutted our energy sector. Paris Agreement, net zero. These are things that are real, and we have difficulty
Well, we
get
talked
people.
today about the Howard government and how they got control of farmers' land and all
Stole
that,
it.
stole it, and how they did it in a way that was. I mean, that's a story. That's a whole other show
Yeah.
all in and of itself. Yeah.
Agenda 21's Sustainable Development Goals.
Yeah.
So many people ridicule the notion of chemtrails in Australia. I don't ridicule the idea.
Mm-hmm.
I'm open to there being chemtrails in Australia. I have never denied it.
Yeah.
I won't say there are chemtrails in Australia because I haven't seen evidence for it. So I won't say there aren't any. I won't say there are some. I just don't know. And I think it's likely, highly likely, that the USA military are doing trials on these things.
Absolutely.
The USA military, the American military, have done inhuman experiments with drugs and chemicals that have killed army people and army soldiers in America, and they're probably doing the same with with the Air Force. And a high proportion of what people claim is evidence that comes to us is from the Americans. Now, people may not know this, but I publicly invited anybody in Australia or anywhere in the world to send me evidence of these events in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that on the 13th of September 2022. Open invitation on my website, and on social media repeatedly I issued that invitation. And we have researched Civil Aviation Safety Authority.
Yep.
The ACT and Snowy authorities, the ACT territory government. We've researched the Snowy Hydro, Tassie, about cloud seeding.
Yep.
Freedom of Information, Parliamentary Library. We know that there's been cloud seeding in Tassie.
Yeah, I nearly got a job doing cloud seeding when I was a young pilot in Tassie.
We know that they've cloud seeded in the Snowy. We know that they've cloud seeded in the ACT, or at least talked about it. We also know that cloud seeding sometimes is from aerial craft, sometimes it's from ground-based cannons shooting into the atmosphere.
Yep.
So we've asked the Parliamentary Library to research the use of potential chemtrails. They have failed to find evidence. And if the Parliamentary Library can't find it, it's not there. They're fantastic. They're neutral from Parliament, so they're not playing games. We confirmed cloud seeding, as I said, ground-based and aerial, and most of the time it failed. Cloud seeding is expensive and it's not very effective. Snowy Hydro is currently exploring the use of it again.
But once again, cloud seeding requires cloud to be present to be seeded.
Yes.
It's not to create cloud, it's to get the cloud to dump the moisture. And it does that by introducing microscopic nuclei into the cloud for the microscopic nuclei that's in there to fasten itself to. So you might get a particle of silver iodide in the cloud, which attracts maybe 4,000 little minute microscopic molecules of water, droplet of water, into one droplet heavy enough to fall out of the cloud. That's what clouds. That's been going on since the 1950s.
Mm-hmm.
CSIRO are doing all that sort of stuff. Now, whether that's right or wrong, or whether it's good or not, that's debatable. But as I said, when I was a young Sprog pilot back in the late 70s, I was offered a job flying a light aircraft around at low level, dropping silver iodide into cumulus clouds to get them to rain on drought-affected areas. I didn't get the job; somebody else got it. But yeah, I'm aware of that. That's been going on. But I reiterate, you have to have cloud to seed. Cloud seeding is not making cloud; it's getting existing cloud to drop the water.
And while I don't respect CASA, Civil Aviation Safety Authority,
me neither.
They're the ones who have to issue permits. So if they're lying to me in Senate estimates, then I need proof that they're lying to me. I can't just accuse them of lying. Yeah. And I won't do that, not even under Senate privilege. I won't do that unless I believe they are lying. And I have not seen evidence to that effect. We've also known, Hoodie, that the British Air Force, the American Air Force, during the Second World War, used to drop pieces of aluminium. They call it aluminium chaff, long, thin strips of aluminium.
Yep.
Deliberately to confuse the enemy radar.
Yep.
So that's known. But that's not a chemical to drop out of the sky. That's a metal that they're dropping out of the sky.
Tinfoil.
That's right. Well, out of aluminium.
Yeah.
That's not geoengineering. We also know that crop dusting pushes out insecticides and fertilizers. That's not geoengineering.
No,
it's not chemtrails. We know that that's happening.
That's been going on for eons as well.
And we know that helicopter pilots in Queensland, southeast Queensland, are baiting fire ants. Well, that's a ridiculous notion, but they're not baiting fire ants. They're spreading toxic pesticides, insecticides around That's not geoengineering. We know that they're happening.
Yeah.
We don't like it, and we're doing what we can to stop it.
It's still corrupted, and once
Yes.
again, government demonstrating it can't be trusted.
Correct.
Again.
So there's no evidence to support chemtrails in Australia. I'm a senator for Queensland and Australia. I'm interested in what's happening in America and other places, but I'm vitally concerned with what's happening in Australia. And we cannot find, after extensive research, my office and I cannot find any evidence of chemtrails or geoengineering in our country. So if we, you know this from being a pilot, I know it from being an engineer and a mine manager. If I lied and did not do my numbers properly, people die.
Yep.
So same with you. So if we pursue unsubstantiated claims, it destroys my credibility for other issues.
Yep.
It wastes my staff time and my time. It wastes our energy. It stops us chasing real issues for constituents.
It's a distraction.
It's a distraction.
Yeah.
If there's evidence, though, I will chase the hell out of it. I've done that with climate fraud, and I keep doing it with climate fraud. I've done it now in my own time and in Senate time for close on 17 years. So climate fraud. COVID, I've chased that like a demon, and I'll still keep chasing it. Infant injections, environmental aspects and claims, water.
Yeah.
So let me now go through, Hoodie, and contradict me if you think I'm wrong. This is what people send us. What about all the patents, Malcolm? What about all the patents? You can get a patent granted to you for an idea, a concept.
Yep.
It doesn't mean it's actually happening. So that's not evidence of chemtrails.
Well, the patent offices around the world are filled with millions, hundreds of millions of designs that have never been implemented. So a patent doesn't mean anything.
No.
Nothing.
It's not evidence.
No.
What about grant submissions and proposals for geoengineering to dim the sun because of climate fraud? That doesn't mean anything either. It's just a grant submission, a grant application. Why? Because they're in on the climate fraud and they want to get the moolah. They want to get the cash out of the climate scam.
Yeah.
Then I think this is a common one that people have sent to you. Pictures of clouds. Pictures of clouds. Or of a flight path on its own.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's not evidence of chemtrails. It's not evidence of geoengineering.
No, and hopefully later on I can explain how those things exist and why they last longer than they used to.
A storm is not proof of anything. A picture of a storm or a record rainfall or sub-record rainfall, that's not evidence of anything. That's just evidence of a storm.
Mm-hmm.
And Hoodie, this is something that I feel I think is very, very important. Nature absolutely dwarfs humanity.
Yep.
The amount of energy captured in the sky is phenomenal. The amount of energy required to lift a glider, a soarer, a pilot, a kilometre into the air, is just phenomenal.
Absolutely.
But they can have 10, 15 glider pilots on one thermal, and they're all going up in one thermal.
Yeah.
That amount of energy is incomprehensible to humans.
Yep.
But it's there. That's there in just a small part of the atmosphere, let alone the whole atmosphere. We lived in Emerald, a wonderful town in central Queensland, my wife and I, and there was Lake Marraboon, Fairbairn Dam, was getting close to being empty. It's a massive dam, and it's got only a small catchment area. And they were putting in place water restrictions. And all of a sudden we got a storm. 7 days, that dam was not only full, it was overflowing, and half of central Queensland was underwater.
Mm.
There is no way anyone can comprehend the power required to take that much water from the Pacific Ocean, 150 kilometres inland, dump it in a small catchment area and flood our dam and flood the central Queensland.
It's phenomenal.
Nature is just so impressive. So we will have little chance of controlling the weather. But I'll raise that again. Hoodie, what about this one? Malcolm, there are United States in America where they are legislating against chemtrails.
Wonderful.
That's good. That's good.
Wonderful.
But we've got legislation here and in the United States against burning hydrocarbon fuels to produce carbon dioxide. That's all bullshit. And just because someone passes legislation doesn't mean anything. It's the evidence that the actual event is happening.
But if I could say there, when I said wonderful, I mean that's great, because in order to do that, they have to investigate it, because how do they determine who's doing it and why and where it's coming from? And if I think RFK said in the States the other day, they're going to look into the chemtrail phenomenon. I think that's brilliant, because at last we'll get some real evidence.
Whether it occurs or not occurs.
Whether it occurs or not.
Yeah.
So that will allay fears. I think that's fantastic. So I'm all for that.
Yes, and what I raised that for was to say that we've got dopey bastards in Congress in America, dopey bastards in Parliament in Australia and the UK and many other countries around the world that are passing legislation that's based on rubbish. So just because they pass legislation does not mean anything. But the fact that they will have to enforce it or try to enforce it, that does mean something. So I agree with you.
Yeah.
Then I watched The Dimming. People said, watch The Dimming, Woody. Come on, watch The Dimming, Malcolm. The Dimming is a movie by Dane Wigington.
Yeah.
It's American. It's a 40-minute video. I lasted 20 minutes. It is just crap. There is no scientific understanding behind the production of that video. That's my view.
Yeah, look, I've watched it several times because I interviewed Dave Wigington, and I find him a very charismatic. He's a charming guy. He's a really nice guy, but he's very passionate about this. But a lot of the evidence that he presents is so easy for anyone with any knowledge of this to shoot holes in. And when you start to doubt some of the information that people have presented, you're automatically led to doubt all of it. I mean, if he's wrong about World War II bombers over Germany making chemtrails,
and you're going to show that picture later.
I'll show you a picture that proves that he's wrong. And the logic just defies belief that they would even be doing that. The average lifespan of a bomber crew in America, the American bomber crew over Europe in daylight bombing raids was 4 missions. They nearly all of them died. They just really copped it. I've been inside one of those B-17 bombers. There's no room. You can't swing a cat in there. They're not huge. They're only little. And they were scrounging for every ounce they could get to carry fuel to get them home and ammunition to keep the fighters at bay. The notion that they were up there experimenting, doing beta testing is laughable. And I presented a photograph taken from the front of the bomber squadron, which upset Dane Wigington when I interviewed him. It upset him because it destroyed his argument. And that photo will be included. That'll be included in this video for you to see for yourself.
Okay. Let's move on. There's a video that I've been sent as proof, claiming to be proof. President Lyndon Johnson saying, we are working on getting control of the weather. What he's doing there, he's doing what some politicians do. He's telling lies. They might be working on it, but he implied in a dishonest way that they're getting control of the weather. Why? Because tornadoes kill people. Hurricanes and cyclones kill people.
Floods kill people.
We'll look after you, mate, Mr. Taxpayer. We'll look after you. We'll spend your money on research, which will get us to control the weather, and then you'll only have beautiful days.
Yeah.
And rain when the farmers want it.
Yeah. And you can bet your bottom dollar they were working on it then as they are working on it now.
Yep. Weather events. I've been told storms, Lismore's rainfall in the 2022 flood. Jennifer Marahasi, who's a known climate scientist and very highly regarded, she also is a marine biologist. She's very, very objective. She said that the rainfall in 2022 around Lismore was less than in 1955.
Mm-hmm.
And in Brisbane, we've had floods in 2022, 2020 rather, 2020, 2011, 2022, 2011, and then they were small compared to 1974. 1974 was tiny compared to 1893, when we had 3 floods in one summer in Brisbane. And they were tiny compared to the 1841 floods, which were tiny compared to some of the earlier records in nature.
Yeah, I was in the 1974 flood on the Gold Coast. We saw canal front homes just disappearing under the water. That was incredible back then.
So floods are nothing unusual. Everyone should have heard of Dorothy McKellar's poem, I Love a Sunburned Country. You get droughts, floods. And when we get a drought or a flood or a bushfire, people say, it's global warming. It's not. It's just life in Australia.
And then you've got other people saying it's weather modification. So is it global warming or weather modification? So you've got 2 camps fighting one another.
It's just nature.
It's just nature.
Yeah. So we have not seen any evidence of weather modification or chemtrails coming out of that. And then some people say, Hoodie, well, the water is contaminated. These chemicals are falling out of the sky and contaminating the water. Yet the National Water Quality Testing shows no chemicals other than the normal background trace chemicals that are at normal levels. Okay. Nothing unusual. There's been no spike. State governments and federal governments monitor these. There's nothing special, not nationally, not in any state, not in any region. So they're not tailoring anything. And then, mate, when I say to people, that's not evidence, we need this kind of evidence, which I'll go into in a little while, I get told, you're a turkey, or you're a F-wit, or you're a whatever.
Yeah.
Name calling and labeling is not evidence. So I just say, evidence, please, when they come back with me at that.
Yeah, I've been called a baby killer by heaps of people. I mean, that's just, yeah, this is the thing that people have got to recognize too. If they who are doing this, then where do they live? What atmosphere do they live under?
Yeah,
Do they
exactly.
walk around in PBE? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Why would you willingly go up and poison the atmosphere you yourself are living in? I mean, the atmosphere is being poisoned just by nature of us doing the things we do. But, you know, the climate has a way of dealing with all of that. It always has.
yeah.
It always has.
Um, so there's nothing special going on. And in fact, when people send me what they see as evidence and I debunk it or say that's not evidence and I need something along the lines I'll talk about in a minute, and they resort to name calling or giving me a label, that tells me they haven't got evidence. Because if they had evidence, they would have given it to me.
Yeah.
So when you slander me, slur me, or defy me, that's not evidence. Then somebody's mentioned Atmospherica in Toowoomba. It's a company that's in Toowoomba. I've gone to their website. They claim to be able to modify droughts to get rain. They claim to be able to one day or potentially, if you hire them, decrease the impacts of tornadoes in America. Now, I saw no evidence on their website. I'm open to a conversation with them, so if anyone knows anyone in Atmospherica, get them to give me a call. I might even give them a call, but I saw no evidence, only claims of results and claims of potential results. So the only results that I could see on their website were of rain that they claim was due to them putting in drought busting cloud seeding.
Cloud seeding again.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but it was very, very vague, nothing specific. So I'd welcome a chat and a briefing. The other thing, Hoodie, that's disturbing, and basically, if you come back to the understanding of climate science and understanding of science, people don't understand what science is. They don't understand what court evidence is. You know, to get a guilty verdict in a court case of someone, if you took them to court and accused them of putting dangerous chemicals into the air, what would a judge or a jury need to be able to convict them? That's what's got to happen. So I'll get onto that in a minute. Well, let's talk about it now. What you need is empirical scientific data. You need observations with the eyes, ears. You need measured results. What was put into the plane? What came out of the plane? Did you see it coming out of the plane? Did you measure it coming out of the plane? Did you measure the impact on the ground? Measure it in the atmosphere? You have another plane coming along. That's what's needed. Empirical scientific data, empirical, actual, observed, and recorded. That's what we need. But that's not all you need. What you need is logical scientific points. You need the data within a logical scientific point, which is a framework that says this happened, it caused this.
Yeah.
This was the input. Who put this into the plane? What did they put into the plane? Why did they put it in the plane?
Who made what they put in the plane?
Thank you. When did they put it in the plane? Where did they fly it? What were the measurements coming out of it? These are all needed for us to make a strong case. So you've got to just imagine a judge or a jury wanting to find someone guilty of putting toxic chemicals into the air. So what's happened is that science has been doctored for climate. There's no empirical scientific data within logical scientific points. It's all experts being quoted. It's all models being used, which are what it's unvalidated and erroneous. So they've already been disproved themselves. But still, we've got lots of the Western world being crippled by energy shortages now, based upon bullshit. But the other thing is you've got to prove cause and effect. This was done, this was the effect. That's part of it. So you need three things: empirical scientific data, observations, within logical scientific points that prove cause and effect. This happened, and this was the result. So then we've got the confusion with reality. That's the next topic. And I'd like you to jump in here, Hoodie. Contrails, mate. What about contrails?
Well, contrails is short for condensation trails.
Condensation trails.
Condensation trails. So, look, a lot of people have said, and we even talked with Christine, your wife, here today over lunch, and she said, when I was a kid in the 60s and 70s, condensation trails over the USA. Didn't last very long. They petered out. But now they're big, they last forever, and they spread out and they form cloud. She's right. And the reasons why she's right, I'd like to explain.
You gave us a great explanation before. There you go.
Well, there, and I'll be putting photographs up for people to have a look at. I've done this before, but some people may have seen this stuff. Back in the early stages of the jet age, when the Boeing 707 and the Whispering T-Jet, the 727,
What's that, 60s, 70s, 90s?
60s, 70s, yeah. When they brought jet air travel into the world, the engine size of those aircraft was small by comparison to today. They were also what was called a turbojet engine or a low bypass jet engine. In other words, all the fuel was burnt to create the thrust through the core of the jet engine itself. So the more fuel you burnt, the more thrust you created, and the further you could go and the faster you could go.
So the fuel came in, ignited, went out the back, creating thrust, which moved the plane forward.
That's right. So the turbine engine worked like that, basically. That was very inefficient. So you'll see a lot of footage of 707s and DC-8s taking off from Mascot or wherever in the old days, and you see them on takeoff. You see these black clouds of soot coming out of the back of the engine.
Products of combustion.
Products of combustion. Very, very inefficient. Then along come the high bypass engines of today. Now, this is a Boeing 737. This is the aeroplane I used to fly in Qantas. The engines of today are that much bigger. Now, the Boeing 707, the first jet airliner, apart from the Comet, de Havilland Comet, which had small engines as well.
What was the British Constellation that came along after them?
No, the Super Constellation was a propeller-driven aeroplane.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
The Comet was the jet engine of the British, and the 707 was the equivalent from Boeing. The engines on the 707 were that small by comparison. And here's a photo that I'm going to insert.
Okay.
This is John Travolta standing alongside a Qantas Boeing 707 jet engine. He's leaning on the top of it. I would be flat out fitting down the middle of that engine. If they took the core of it out and the engine nacelle, the cowling, I would be flat out fitting down there myself.
Oh, I get down there.
You might just
Get
get
it a run.
right? But then you have this aeroplane, the Boeing 737. You can fit 4 of those 707 engines inside that engine.
The same amount of thrust.
Probably, yeah. Now, if we're talking semantics about the numbers, I haven't got those numbers.
What do you mean? What do you mean you put 4 in there?
The size of the jet engine itself that sits on the wing, you could pack 4 of those into this engine nacelle here.
So engines have grown much bigger.
Much bigger
size.
Now the jet core in the engine itself, which is geared now to a gearbox which drives a big turbo fan in the front of the cowling. The turbo fan produces about 85% of the thrust. And the jet core itself, which used to produce 100% of the thrust in the early engines, is now producing some thrust to drive the aircraft forward, but most of the energy is used to drive that big fan.
So the fan creates most of the thrust.
The fan creates most of the thrust.
So you've got fuel being ignited in the jet core, which then turns a turbine, which delivers the thrust out.
Right. So that engine there, that intake is sucking in vast volumes more of atmosphere than the Boeing 707 engine used to. And if that atmosphere is carrying a lot of water vapor,
which is normal,
but that varies, like when we have droughts, there's not a lot of water vapor in the sky. That's why we have droughts. But in conditions where there's a lot of water vapor in the sky, we get a lot of water, we get a lot of rain, and that water vapor condenses. So this huge engine here, which is big by comparison to the 707, sucks in vast amounts more atmosphere, squeezes it like a sponge, condenses it, passes that condensation over a hot jet core in the middle of the engine, which is 1700 degrees.
1700 degrees centigrade.
Centigrade. That then, as it comes out the back, it's starting to turn into steam. Now, the temperature out here at cruising altitude before the air goes through the engine is about minus 55 degrees centigrade.
That's way less than freezing temperature.
Way less than freezing temperature. But that water vapor, which is a gas, has to turn into a water droplet before it can freeze. So when the engine sucks in all that atmosphere, squeezes it, compresses all that water vapor, then superheats it through past the core, then it comes out the back, it goes from 55, minus 55 here, passes through the core here over 1700 degrees Celsius, and comes out the back through that exhaust pipe at the back, around that exhaust pipe at the back, and the temperature at that exhaust pipe is around 780 to 800 degrees.
So coming out of the exhaust.
Out of the exhaust.
700
That's how hot it is, yeah. So all that moisture
which
that's
is way, 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 way above boiling point.
way above boiling point.
So any moisture coming out the back comes out of steam.
That's right. And then what happens is that's
steam is
superheated.
invisible.
Yeah,
usually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when that superheated water droplets come out the back, they come out the back in minus 55 degrees again, and they freeze into microscopic ice particles, crystals, and they form cirrus clouds.
So a cirrus cloud is composed of ice crystals.
Ice crystals.
Okay.
And they're minute, and they're not dense enough to be able to travel to fall out of the sky. They remain suspended in the upper atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if they did, they would start to thaw and they would evaporate before they got anywhere near the ground anyway. So these engines, as a byproduct of thrust, are producing cirrus cloud.
Right.
Now that then lingers because there's much more volume than there used to be in the old days. Now you look at that.
So can we also just point out something else?
Hmm.
With a contrail, quite often, depends on the atmosphere, but quite often the actual trail will be seen some distance behind the wing.
Yes.
Because the plane is moving forward. So when the ice comes out of the jet engine,
when the steam comes out, yeah.
When the steam comes out at the jet engine, by the time the planes move forward in another second, you've got a huge gap before it actually freezes. And so you've got a gap between the plane wing, the plane engine, and the actual start of the white condensation trail.
That's right. That's right. Now, if you were spraying out of a nozzle in a tank, you'd see it connected to the nozzle. You'd see the spray connected to the nozzle.
You'd see the trail coming
out of the nozzle.
Or out of the wing.
Now, I'm talking about this is a short haul aeroplane. This is a small aeroplane. A Boeing 777, which is one of the largest twin engine airplanes around, and you've got the Airbus A330, A350, and other variants they're bringing out. The engines that drive those bigger aircraft is as big as the fuselage, this cabin area, in diameter.
So the whole cabin can almost fit inside the core of the
jet engine of a 777 or one of the larger Airbuses.
And you're going to show a picture.
I'll show a diagram of that. So basically, I could fly that fuselage, that entire cabin down the throat of a 777 engine. Imagine the difference in production of turning water vapor into condensation through an engine that's that big. And then you get the A380, the super jumbo, whose engines are even bigger than that again. And here's a photo of a man standing underneath an A380 engine. And you can see for yourself, these new high bypass turbofan engines produce cirrus cloud as a byproduct of thrust.
And the amount of thrust coming out of a modern large jet engine is many, many, many times greater than that, or greater than the early jet engine.
Greater than the early jet engine.
In the space of just 70 years, which is the lifespan of a man or a woman, we have come that far.
Yep.
So what's the consequence of that in what we see in the sky?
Well, the consequence is that if you get the volume of air traffic that we have every day around the world, 38 million flights
in a year?
In a year, 38 million commercial airline flights a year, and they're pumping out all that kerosene, burning all that kerosene in the upper atmosphere, and they're turning moist air masses into cloud. That stuff lingers in the upper atmosphere, and yes, aircraft like these are producing cloud, but not in nefarious ways that people think.
And another point you mentioned to Christine when she raised this was you said, off will go a Virgin flight. 2 minutes behind will go Jetstar flight.
Oh, now you're talking about the patterns in the sky, right? Everyone says, what are they, what are these grid patterns? All right, so in early morning, an early day start for me in Sydney, for example.
Cold air.
Cold air. If I was the first flight of the day out of Sydney, the curfew comes off at 6 a.m. And let's say here I am in my Boeing 737 taxiing out to runway 16 in Sydney to depart to Melbourne. And stacked up behind me in the queue is another, probably one of these, which is going down over Canberra towards Adelaide. And then there'll be a Jetstar one going down over Canberra towards Adelaide. There'll be a Virgin one going down over Canberra towards Adelaide. And then there'll be another Virgin Jetstar, whatever, going to over Canberra to Melbourne. So you've got, in the space of an hour, you've probably got a couple of dozen flights heading down over Canberra, for example. I'm using Canberra as an example. Now, the upper atmosphere that we fly in when we go north-south is generally moving across the sky from west to east.
Heading for New Zealand.
Heading for New Zealand. And that the velocity of the air mass moving through can be anything from 30 or 40 knots, or say 100 kilometres an hour, upwards to 300 kilometres an hour, depending on the wind
300
speed.
kilometres an hour.
The wind speed up can be over 150, 180 knots.
So the plane's going basically south, but the air above it or below
The air it's flying in.
the air it's flying in is going sideways at 300 kilometres an hour.
Right. So if there was no air and I was flying this aeroplane on this heading track to Melbourne, if there was no wind, then my track and my heading would be the same because there's no wind that I've got to allow for. But in winds that are strong like that, I'd be flying to Melbourne at an angle like that.
So you're going sideways.
I'm laying off into the wind, right? So you get to the same destination. So I've taken off at 6 o'clock. Virgin's taken off behind me at 2 minutes past 6. The air mass that I flew through 2 minutes ahead of Virgin has been blown, let's say, a kilometre or 2 kilometres to the left, right? I'm heading south. Then Virgin flies through that same air mass and he makes a trail. And it's been blown across. So we're setting up railway tracks.
So you've got many, many lines.
Many, many lines, and they all look like they're being flown deliberately. Well, they are being flown deliberately, but the air has moved on, carrying the cirrus cloud that was created as a condensation trail with it.
So the air around over your flight, by the time the Virgin flight comes over, that same air with your contrail is over here somewhere.
That's right.
Actually, a kilometre or so away, so it's way away.
Yeah, so that you see these railway track lines. But then they say, what about the checkerboard pattern? All right, that's going... Crisscrosses. This is going from Sydney to Melbourne, in my example. At the same time, you've got flights coming from New Zealand, from Christchurch, Wellington, Auckland, that are flying across to Perth, maybe across to Melbourne or across to Adelaide or to Asia, Africa. They're all flying across the East Coast. They're overflying. They're leaving a trail as well. Yeah. And then before you know it, you get these patterns forming in the sky. These patterns from these kinds of aeroplanes, civil airline aircraft, are cirrus clouds being produced as a byproduct of the thrust of the engine. I have never flown one of these with a chemtrail switch in it. I've never seen a tank where chemicals would be put in it. The one thing I will say is that in my 36,000 hour flying career, I burned over 100,000 tonnes of kerosene in the upper atmosphere.
100,000 tonnes.
100,000 tonnes.
One pilot.
Yeah, one pilot. Now, when we're putting that kind of pressure on the upper atmosphere, things are going to change. But is it deliberately being done? Well, how can it be deliberately being done? If you think that chemtrails are killing people and you think it's being sprayed from aeroplanes like this, then don't buy an airline ticket to Melbourne. Don't fly to London.
Don't go to Bali.
Don't go to Bali. Because the aeroplane, I will guarantee you that at some part of the flight from Brisbane to Bali, your aircraft that you're on at some stage will pass through a moist air mass and it will leave a condensation trail, which you, if you were on the ground, would call a chemtrail.
So I'll give people another example. You can stand next to a modern coal-fired power station, which uses scrubbers to take the real pollutants, the sulfur dioxide, the nitrous oxides, the particulates out of the flue gases coming out of the boiler. So you're left with two gases, carbon dioxide, which is invisible, odorless, colorless, tasteless. You can't even see it.
Yep.
You can't even feel it. And the other gas coming out is steam, water vapor. Now, on a normal day, you'll see nothing visible coming out of there, but there's water vapor and carbon dioxide coming out. On a hot day, you won't see anything because there's no condensation. But on a cold day, you'll see white stuff coming out of the smokestack because that's steam. It condenses in the chimney, and it's a little bit above the chimney where that condensation starts. And that then billows. And then if you want to go further and you want to get that on a cold sunset, and you put the sun behind the chimney, all of that steam suddenly turns into dark shadow. And it looks like a highly polluting coal-fired power station. It's producing virtually no pollution, just carbon dioxide and water vapor, both invisible. But because of the tricks they play, it's made out to be a pollutant. So what I'm saying is, same with the coal-fired power station. On a cold day, you will see steam coming out or water vapor coming out. The same power station, just an hour later, you'll see nothing coming out, but there's plenty coming out. But it's invisible because of the condensation.
Exactly right. And let's look at early in the morning. You're going to work at 6 o'clock in the morning in winter. You start your car, you back it out of the garage, you go and close your garage door. You walk around the back of your car and you can see all the steam coming out of the exhaust. What do you see touching the driveway? Water droplets falling out of your exhaust pipe. Condensation.
And also, people somehow think that the atmosphere is smooth. It's far from smooth. It's highly dynamic.
Yep.
I know my son, when he was 15-year-old, I took him up to John Darien to the soaring school, the gliders, soarers they call them, and they had excellent weather forecast there.
Yep.
And they would tell us, I'm going to not exaggerate, but I'm just going to pull these figures out of my head, not from my memory, just out of my imagination. The ground, we might be feeling the wind coming from the west. Just a few thousand meters up, the air would be coming from the east.
Yep.
Completely opposite. A few thousand meters above that, the air might be coming from the north.
Yep.
A few thousand kilometers above that might be coming from the south.
Yep.
So you've got air going every which way, and all we can see from down here is that we can just feel the air is coming from the west. That's it. But it's coming from every direction. And then in each of those areas, each of those levels, you'll have a certain pressure, you'll have a certain temperature, you'll have a certain moisture content.
Yep.
And so you can see the complexity of the natural air environment. And so you've got that's why some planes will be flying in one level and they will produce contrails. Another one on another level won't produce contrails.
That's
Is that
right.
plausible?
That's exactly right.
So people say, the one without the contrails is, see,
He's not spraying.
He's not spraying. The one with the contrails, he must be spraying because it's all one atmosphere. But it's not.
Well, you've got to imagine too that if those aircraft are at the same altitude, there's a risk of collision. They're deliberately kept a couple of 1,000 feet apart. So the aeroplane higher might be making a contrail and the one lower isn't in an atmospheric situation to produce a contrail.
And you mentioned contrails are the jet engine and also the airfoil over the wing increases pressure, and pressure, temperature, and moisture content determine whether or not a contrail is formed.
That's right.
So, and I know that having been in river fire, seen the jets in river fire, what do they call them? Super Hornets?
Super Hornets, yeah.
They come tearing up the river, and we're looking down on these planes, these little Hornets, from a skyscraper, and they'll suddenly bank to go up over the Story Bridge. A beautiful sight. It's absolutely stunning. And these pilots just shooting straight upwards. And the moment they start turning, you start seeing contrails, moisture, coming off the shoulders of the engines.
Yep.
And bits of the wing.
Yep.
And that's because of the pressure.
Pressure differential, which is causing compression and therefore squeezing the moisture out of the atmosphere. The vapor turns into water droplets. That's where you get those clouds forming on top of the wings.
And then something else you told me, which is common sense, if you've got a wind coming this way and you've got a mountain range here, the wind has got to go over it and down the other side.
Yeah, and that pushes up through upper levels. That whole thing, the whole system is constantly moving.
So that will distort the atmosphere pressure, temperature, moisture content, and
Yeah.
that will so suddenly contrast will be there, absent, and there again.
Right. So you've got these waves of varying temperature, moisture content,
Pressure.
pressure. And if an aeroplane is flying through the valleys, it'll create a condensation trail, and then it looks like it's been turned off. It's gone through a trough into the rising air mass. There's not enough moisture, or the temperature moisture content isn't balanced enough to prevent condensation, and it looks like it's been turned on and off, on and off. It's like a boat going over rapids, bumper, 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 bumper. Um, and it's the same. The atmosphere is fluid, Malcolm. It's constantly rolling. For example,
Well, gas is known as a fluid.
it is a fluid.
Water is not the only fluid.
So there's a weather phenomenon. It's not really a phenomenon. It's called an occluded front. An occluded front is when a cold front and a warm front collide. Okay. Cold air is more dense or less dense than hot air?
Cold air is more dense.
More dense. It's heavier.
Because it's colder, so you've got more air in it.
It's more compacted, right?
That's right.
So if you get a cold air mass that's moving through and it brushes up against a hot air mass, the cold air mass is going to force the hot air mass up like a bulldozer blade.
Yep.
As the hot air mass rises, carrying moisture with it, it condenses, and you get these long lines of cloud front. You've seen photos of it. And the air, you can have two air masses side by side, different temperatures and densities and different pressures.
Same elevation,
same altitude, but collide, and the warmer air, which is lighter and less dense, rises. It becomes more dense as it cools, and you get this upper level turbulence, and you get these upper level troughs and things like that they talk about. All these things are differing atmospheric conditions. Have you ever laid on your front lawn at home and looked up and watched different layers of cloud? You'll see one layer of cloud going one way and another layer of cloud going the other way. That's what it's like in the upper atmosphere. That's why when we're moving around from one place to another, we're looking for areas with the least amount of headwind to give us more fuel efficiency and get us to the destination on time. And we're going to vary all over the place depending on where the weather conditions are. It's all so variable. And there's no rhyme or reason to it because it varies. Now, here's the thing I often hear, and I bet you do. You'll see chemtrails, and 3 days later you get rain. So they must, right. So people are assuming that what they call the spraying has brought on the rain. It's not, it's the other way around. What's happening is that the engines that are passing through the sky, creating the condensation, are letting you know that there's a moist air mass coming.
So they're going through. So one day there's no condensation trails. Next day there are condensation trails because the moisture is coming, and the moisture doesn't come in one hit. It builds up gradually.
All right. So yeah, it's like a pressure wave. It's like a bulldozer pushing soil along. If you pushed a bulldozer through a sand dune, you'd start to see ripples in the sand way in front of it that were small, and then that would get bigger and bigger and bigger. So these air masses move through, they're dense, and they push the air along, and they condense it. So the dry air is being forced up against the moister, colder air, and the moisture level builds up gradually. So when there's a level of moisture in the atmosphere that's going to support rain in the future, you can always tell whenever I was going camping or anything, if I was flying the day before and I was seeing a lot of contrails, I could virtually guarantee that I was going to have a wet camping trip.
There you are. You heard it from the expert, weather forecasting.
That's
Hoodie's weather forecasting.
So that's an indicator that moist air is coming.
So rather than there being contrails that cause rain, it's moisture causing the contrails,
which is warning you that there's more moist air coming,
and it will rain. So so they've got cause and effect reversed here.
Yeah. And see, I can understand why people get really confused about this and anxious about it. We didn't get anxious about this sort of stuff decades ago because we trusted government. We trusted everything. Now we're cynical about everything. Nothing makes sense anymore. But we've got to make sure that we're not being distracted, and we've got to make sure that we can fix the things we can and not get hung up on the things we can't.
And the point that you told Christine and myself about the amount of uh, aircraft flight travel increasing so dramatically and the jet engines becoming so much more efficient, but at the same time much more powerful, means there's a huge increase in the amount of kerosene being burned.
Yeah.
And the kerosene contains, being a natural compound and varied from oil well to oil well from the raw product, just like coal. If you mine coal in one area, or you get gas out of one area, or you get oil out of one area, the composition of natural elements in that is different because of the way it was formed. And so you've got trace elements in kerosene, jet fuel, that vary from time to time, but you'll always have not just hydrogen and carbon atoms in the hydrocarbon fuel, which is kerosene, but you'll also have various other elements in there, including metals.
Well, exactly right. Now, one expert in America who's given evidence to the Congress, he is very much a weather engineering guy. He and Dane Wigington were sharing the same platform. They were the same belief. But he started to smell a rat in the cheese factory, and he wondered why some of the stuff didn't add up, you know. Jim Lee is his name, and we interviewed him. We've interviewed Dane Wigington on Club Grubbery, and we interviewed Jim Lee separately, just as well, because I don't think they get on. But Jim had an analysis done of kerosene soot.
So he was doing the scientific approach, getting the data.
He was getting the data, and he had found, and there's a video link I'll put in this for you, where the interview, where he shows graphs and scientific data. He found that there were trace elements of aluminium, barium, and strontium in the soot from burnt kerosene.
Natural, untouched jet kerosene.
Yeah. So you can make up your own minds about that. All I'm saying is we've got to look at what data we've got, and Jim Lee actually presents data that's scientifically proven, and he's taken it to Congress, and he's leading the charge. He wants weather modification ended. He wants it all stopped, but he's taking a different approach. He's basing his approach on scientific research, proper scientific research backed up by data.
Empirical scientific data.
Empirical scientific data. So it's well worth comparing Jim Lee to Dane Wigington in their approaches. Both of them are lovely men. They're both good men. I didn't agree with Dane Wigington, but I like the guy. I like the cut of his jib. But, you know, once again, in everything, if somebody's presenting you with what they say is a fact and you know it's not a fact, then how can you rely on all the other information they're presenting to you to be fact? You have to question all of it. And isn't that what science is? Isn't it? Science is about questioning.
And debating.
And debating.
And looking at many different alternatives. So a true scientist will put forward a hypothesis to explain nature. Then he'll put forward, or she will put forward, the data to justify their explanation.
Yeah.
And a true scientist will then say to another scientist, "Hey mate, will you tear into this and try to prove me wrong?"
Yep.
A true scientist will celebrate being proven wrong because it means the knowledge mass of humanity has increased.
Yep.
And he can then start, instead of following down that trail, he'll go to a better trail and maybe actually come up with something that's accurate.
Yep.
So a true scientist begs people to prove him wrong. And then if it's not wrong, his point's made.
So let me summarize where I think we're up to now. Let's do a midway summary in this. Condensation trails are real. They are more prevalent today than they were when you were kids, probably, when you saw them, and most of the time you wouldn't have paid much attention to them. They are changing the weather in the upper atmosphere, but by the sheer nature of the fact that they're producing bulk amounts of cirrus cloud, which is a byproduct of jet thrust. That's it, purely and simply. I've tried to explain that from an atmospheric meteorological point of view. There are elements within burnt kerosene that are concerning, and that needs to be properly and thoroughly researched. What else? The air is fluid. The temperatures and the variations all over the planet and at all levels of the atmosphere are constantly changing.
Pressure, temperature, and
moisture content, constantly changing. The lines in the sky being parallel like railway tracks is because the air mass that the first contrail was produced in has moved on. The new control is laid down, it moves on. The next one is laid down, it moves on. And by the time any of that moisture over Canberra, for example, at 38,000 feet in a condensation trail, by the time it might evaporate and touch the surface, because most of the time, but by the time that moisture descends to the surface, it would have evaporated anyway because it's so minute. By the time that got anywhere near ground level, it would be well on the other side of New Zealand, Malcolm. So people are saying they're spraying my house. If you see a trail in the sky 38,000 feet, that sucker's not going to go anywhere near your house. That's going to be hundreds of kilometres off the coast, even if it does get to the ground and is evaporated and taken back up to become moisture, water vapour again to be reused, because everything's cyclical.
Well, that's a good summary. This ignorance of science is pervasive. It's right through the media. Emma Alberici, when I first got into Parliament in 2016, she was their attack dog in the ABC. I think she's a pretty good bulldog. I don't always agree with her. I think she's ideologically driven, but she's pretty savvy.
Yep.
Okay, she said to me, well, you've made a point that you want empirical evidence. Well, I'll give you empirical evidence, mate. Humans produce so many gigatons of carbon dioxide every year. Hoodie, that is empirical evidence.
Is it?
It's actually not. It's not, because they don't measure it. They estimate it, they guess it. But let's just say that she measured it. She didn't, but let's just say she measured it. That's data, but it's not proof of anything because it's not within a logical scientific point. It's not a logical framework that proves cause and effect. So saying there's X amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, that means nothing. You've got to understand what's causing it.
Yep.
So you've got to have the data within a logical framework that proves cause and effect. And you've got to have no evidence disproving it. The moment you have evidence disproving it, it's gone. It's finished. It's over. And you've just done that. The other point for people to remember at home is that I take my job very, very seriously, as you did yours as you do now as a public speaker. You've got to be honest. There are millions of people who review what I say in Parliament.
I'm one of them.
And the fact checkers, and you should be. And the fact checkers who try to discredit us and other parties that they don't agree with are ruthless and dishonest at times. So we've got to be scrupulous. My staff sometimes produce speeches that have links in them just so that I can check. I trust them. But we make sure that the fact checkers have got nothing on us. So I rarely get fact checked. So these issues need hard data, hard measured data. They need solid proof of someone doing a specific action or causing a specific event, and it needs to be measured, observed, recorded, and documented. We need to know what, when, where, who, how, and preferably why, so we can understand why they did it. You can't always get the why. So examples of evidence that meets this standard include flight paths. This is off my website. Flight paths, flight registrations or tail numbers, government approvals, other permits or evidence of material being loaded into a plane. This evidence must be temporarily, that means close in time, to a claimed weather event that's supposedly a result of it. Validity, accuracy, association are essential. Truth is essential, absolutely essential. Otherwise, we're no better than the lying governments and politics that spread those toxins into our arms. So that's so every moment I spend chasing an unfounded issue is a moment not chasing a real issue for a constituent. Ask my wife about my family time as it is. So we love, just as you do, we love our constituents doing their duty and asking us, holding us accountable. But we need people to provide empirical scientific data, logical scientific points, cause and effect, data and facts. Now, sometimes they haven't got the data and we will get it. We've tried getting it. We've investigated these claims. There's nothing there in our country. I'm not saying there isn't in America, but there's no evidence supporting it in our country at the moment. So when I have data, I will tackle any issue, as people know. I will tackle any issue. So we need constituents doing their duty. The other point I'd make is that my office is not government. I am not government. I'm in Parliament, and Parliament holds the government accountable. We're the watchdogs over the government. Any comments you want to make on that?
Uh, no, look, once again, I go back to the cynicism we all feel.
Yeah.
And the recent
And that includes me, I feel.
that includes you too, because you're a citizen as well as a senator. We've been through an election that's really rocked our socks. And we're starting to feel the pressure of having I'll edit that. We're starting to feel the pressure of having a lot of ignorant politicians doing the job that some of you guys have been doing pretty well prior to the last election. You know, we had a whole bunch of senators in there that were doing a great job flying the flag for us all. And you look at the current batch of politicians and those that were in the majority while in the last term, and you have to doubt their credibility, their capacity to understand or do research.
Mate, it's pathetic.
It's shocking. And they're just going along their towing a party line, aren't they?
Well, that's correct, and pushing an ideology, and quite often they don't know what they're doing, but the party is following an agenda from outside the country that's hurting our national interest.
Yeah.
So what they're doing is that a lot of things in Parliament can be explained not by malice, but by stupidity, deceit, ignorance, laziness, and gutlessness.
Yeah.
You know, there's a saying, why attribute malice when stupidity suffices? I extend that to why attribute malice or deceit or corruption when stupidity, gutlessness, and laziness suffice.
Yep, exactly. Exactly right. So, yeah, there's some other points about the whole chemtrail thing I want to bring up.
Away you go.
There are millions of people in the worldwide aviation industry. Now, it's not just pilots, engineers, and flight attendants. There are ground engineers, refuelers, the people who manufacture the fuel, the people who distribute the fuel. There's air traffic controllers. There's airport security, airside security people wandering around all over the place. There's
There wouldn't be more secure civilian environment.
That's right. And that you multiply that by every airport around the world. If this is credible and it is going on at the scale at which some people assume it is, we would have whistleblowers lining up all over the place. Why aren't they? Now, out of all the so-called whistleblowers I've seen, there's only one that has credibility.
Is that woman from America?
A woman from America. We interviewed her on Club Grubbery. I think we interviewed her twice. She's amazing. She was working in procurement for the US Air Force, and she was procuring these chemicals for distribution at an air base that she was working at in the northern part of North America, I believe.
Defense facility.
Defense facility. Now, she presented credible evidence that the US Air Force is involved in something like that.
And I'm not surprised.
And I'm not surprised either. But she did say that she doubted that commercial airline aircraft are doing it. So the point is this. I would have to say that more than 95% of all high-flying jet aircraft flights in Australia are these fellas. Civilian aircraft. 95%.
It'd be even higher than that, wouldn't
it? It would be even higher than that. Now, the Australian Air Force, the Australian military possess very few aircraft. Very few. When you go flying in Australian airspace on specific air routes, you know who the guys are in front of you. You know who's following you because you're in this aerial ballet. You know. You took off with them from the same airport. You landed, you saw them taxi in behind you or in front of you. If you knocked off all of the aircraft that are commercial airline aircraft out of the equation, and you're saying that all those trails up in the sky are being sprayed by nefarious aircraft, either military or contractors employed to do that job, then that is a huge number of airplanes. Where are they being refueled? Where are they landing? Where are they getting their maintenance? And why aren't we seeing them? Because every day I went to work, I passed dozens and dozens of aircraft coming towards me at different altitudes and flying across my path. I knew who they were. I spoke to their pilots often. We'd share information about turbulence and weather. I have never seen anything nefarious at all in my entire aviation career that has me thinking, oh, that's a bit odd.
Well, apart from the COVID injection mandates.
apart from the mandates, exactly right. But I'm talking about I've seen A330 KC-30 tankers, Air Force, Royal Australian Air Force mid-air refuelers refueling Super Hornets. That's a sight to see.
Mm.
That was over Western Queensland. They were doing manoeuvres. I saw them doing that. But I've not seen anything else, Malcolm. You see the
How
odd
many years and how many hours?
36,000 flying hours, 53 years, 32 years a captain flying at high altitude, 6 million passengers over 12 million miles, hand on heart. And believe me, people should know by now that I'm out there trying to do everything I can to bring common sense to this country and get rid of overarching government. If there's any corruption, I want it done with. I want us to
Yep.
live in an honest, scientifically based and proven society where we can trust the information we're getting and the guidance we're getting. And none of us trust government anymore. I'm looking for information, but I'm sorry, a photo of a chemtrail that somebody says is a chemtrail is not it. And I have to say this with all deference to my so-called colleagues who are podcasters, some of them are making a welter out of this. I don't mean financially. They're clickbaiting, they're
Yeah.
using it for nefarious purposes, I believe. I don't know that they know that they're doing it for those reasons, whether they're aware of it, but they're so fixated on it that it's become quite nonsensical. It's distracting people not only from everyday life, but from the real issues that we need to be on top of to confront. There's a train coming,
Yep.
Malcolm. We know what's coming. We know what the globalists are trying to do. We know that we've just elected a communist government for probably another 3 terms because the liberal opposition was so feeble that it will take decades for it to recover. Probably we are condemned now to a Marxist socialist government, which is spreading around the world. That's the big issue we're fighting. The things that we're arguing over, even COVID, even the COVID mandates and the COVID so-called vaccines, they're a beautiful distraction for what the globalists are trying to
Yep.
do. While we're all fixated on the background noise, they're carrying out their agenda like there's no tomorrow. We've got to focus on what we can fix. The Serenity Prayer says, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. We've got to cultivate all those 3 things. And the amount of time I spend defending my position on condensation trails, having admitted I believe that they're weather modifying, I believe they are, but just saying, hang on, that's not what you think it is, because I know what you're worried about that, because I used to make those trails in the sky, which were condensation. My whole thing is about getting people to chill and, let's stay sensible and rational. John Larder's with me on that.
I'm with you on that.
That's right. This is what we want to do. So let's not get carried away. Look, the amount of argument over what the shape of the Earth is. This flat Earth argument. Did Neil Armstrong walk on the moon? Even 9/11. All those things are incredible distractions that take us off the game. To me, I don't even think that Neil Armstrong didn't walk on the moon because he was my hero.
Well, didn't an Indian spacecraft?
An Indian spacecraft has photographed the surface of the moon and they found 3 Apollo landing sites.
3 Apollo landing sites.
Yeah, Apollo landing sites. You can see where the base of the lunar module was left behind when the lunar module left to go back up to the command
Well,
module.
that's pretty reassuring.
Well, yeah, but there are people out there who are going to say that was fake. But, I'm not here to tell you that it was or it wasn't. All I'm saying is I don't want to be distracted. I don't want to be distracted with the mouse in the corner of the room while there's a gang of thugs breaking into my house in the bedroom.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're also saying is that people who are going off on some things without evidence are guilty of distracting us from the real thing.
Exactly right.
They're almost, what's that false opposition? What's it called?
The Galilean dialectic,
No,
Stockholm syndrome.
no. They're saying this is the real thing over here, when the real thing is over there. They're distracting us. They're sucking away our resources, even if it's through ignorance. Sometimes it's deliberate to keep us away from the real agenda, which is global control.
Global control. That's the real agenda. And some people will say, well, chemtrails is one of the ways they're doing it. But you got to look.
You've got to get the evidence.
you've got to get the evidence. And if your car's blowing smoke all the time and you keep putting additive in the oil, you're in denial. What you know in your heart that you're going to have to get a new car or put a new engine in or get the rings and bearings done in the thing. All you're doing is by living in denial, you don't even know that you're lying. Don't even know I am lying. That's the terminology for living in denial. And we're all caught up in it. It's so easy to be distracted. But some podcasters who have no experience in upper atmosphere work, they don't understand meteorology or anything, are saying things like, "Oh, look at that mongrel up there spraying me. He's at super high altitude." And I look at the video and I say, "No, he's not. He's at 20,000 feet. He's not at super high altitude." What qualifies that person to say that that aeroplane's at super high altitude? Where's the qualification? How can you tell by looking at a
You
plane?
can't.
You can't. And then you've got all these things that are not only distracting, what they're doing is making us all look like a gaggle of fools to people who we need to wake up. We need our country to wake up. But these arguments that we're having about things, nefarious things like this, only detract and make us look stupid in front of the people who are just coming to life now. We've got to bring everybody on a journey with us.
Can I summarize what you just said?
Yeah.
What I interpret, what you're saying is that if we all just follow people who don't provide the empirical scientific data within logical scientific points, then we're getting distracted potentially.
Yeah, we are.
And then we're missing the real issue.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is that the number one entity that is guilty of avoiding the use of accurate data is the government. The government, believe me, in Canberra, when people run a small business or a large corporation, they run it based on the data. This may not surprise you. It may surprise you. It certainly horrifies me that the major decisions, major legislation, the major policies that are made in Parliament House in Canberra, and particularly by the governments of Labor and Liberal, are not based on data, and quite often they contradict the data that's actually real. They don't give a damn about it. They do it based upon ideology, based upon emotions, headlines, getting votes, conning people, looking after their vested interests, looking after their mates, their donors. That's what's driving this country. So don't follow them. Instead, get the data, and think about what you're doing before you send it to us. Think about what you're accusing, because you could be distracting and helping these bastards destroy our country. That's what the responsibility is. Would that be a fair summary?
That's exactly the way I see it. And we've all got a responsibility to make sure that we do that.
I'll do my bit in Parliament.
And we'll do the best we can to get the information out as we see it, but we're going to make sure it's credible and logical. And I'll go back to a Club Grubbery's mantra is we've got to stay on target, we've got to stay disciplined, we've got to stay rational, and we've got to win people across gradually. You don't go into somebody's bedroom and throw a bucket of ice water over them and expect them to wake up and join you in conversation. They're going to be angry. We've got to do this carefully, logically, systematically, and in a disciplined way, so that people can see that they're not the first thing they're going to think of is that we're all nut jobs.
Yes, and the people who are watching this, who are in the freedom movement, if you want to call it that, who are awake to what's going on in government, you're small in number. You are very small in totality of numbers. What we have to do is exactly what Hoodie just said. We have to wake up more people. You're not going to wake them up by hurting them, by insulting them. You're going to wake them up by slowly revealing the facts based upon hard data. Got another question for you. Sometimes, then we'll wrap up. If you want to wrap up. Okay. That some people send us evidence of flight paths with very short radius curves down the bottom and up the top. You mentioned something to me about that, impossible to do for a large craft.
Well, yeah, I was a crop dusting pilot when I was a young fella, and yeah, I know.
You're insane.
I know.
But you survived, so you can't.
That's right. So an aeroplane, a big aeroplane that moves at speed requires a fairly large area to turn around in, a turning radius. Because if you tried to turn this thing on a dime, I can tell you, where are we? If you tried to turn it on a dime, you'd have to almost roll it over on its back and it would go in like that. So it's
impossible.
It's impossible. The only kind of aircraft that could do a really tight turn like that is something that's almost aerobatic. And you're talking about a light aircraft. A light aircraft that doesn't have a great deal of momentum, that can do, excuse the language, a split-ass turn and come back down and fly along its trail. That's what we used to do in crop dusting. You used to have to pull up like that, do your turn up high, come back around and fly back along the trail that you left to put an even spray of chemical over the crop, which was another disastrous thing to do. Any aeroplane that is that small to be able to turn in a radius like that is not going to have the carrying capacity to be spraying anything.
Yep.
It does not have the capacity to spray anything that's going to be measurable.
Well, it sprays crops, but it's not going to have the capacity to spray the volume of material that would cover a large area.
No.
So it's impossible.
That's right. And some of those diagrams that I've been sent have been doctored. So there are mischievous people out there who are playing games. Like there are photos. This is what I want to talk about. Some of the photos.
Yeah.
Right. There are photos of pilots sitting in the cockpit of a jet, like a 737. In fact, it was a 737 because I recognised it. And they had patches on their shoulder that said Chemtrail Squadron. They had
So they were playing games, were they?
Yes. They had switches on their overhead panel, which were hydraulic switches, but they put little stickers on them and it said chemtrails.
And they look so doctored, those things. I've seen photos of them.
Yeah, and then they're wearing a mask. Now, the mask is the oxygen mask that's alongside the pilot in case there's a decompression.
Yeah.
And they were putting that on, they were fooling. Ask yourself this question. If you were nefariously involved in spreading chemtrails, would you have a switch that was marked chemtrail in your cockpit? You wouldn't. You would. That'd be like, oh, look, there's the switch. All people are having fun with you. People are joking with you about this. And I've come back to I've only seen one credible whistleblower that has me concerned about some activities.
And that's from America.
Yeah. Now, some of the photos that have been presented by one very popular broadcaster on geoscience, and there's two prominent ones. There's Jim Lee and Dane Wigington. Dane Wigington, I'll use his name. He presents a lot of photos, as I said, of Boeing B-17s over Germany during World War II doing daylight bombing raids. Those aircraft are tiny by comparison. As I said, they wouldn't fit. You couldn't fit anything in there. When they lost an engine, they were jettisoning guns and ammunition and material overboard to lighten the load to get home. He had a group of photographs showing all these trails coming off these bombers. The crews on those bombers hated the trails, the condensation trails, because it led the fighters and the flak gunners right to where they were. And if you look at some World War II footage, you'll also see oncoming German fighters coming at these bombers in hundreds. And you'll see them all leaving little condensation trails behind them. Wigington said the B-17s were doing the testing of the spraying back then. And he showed pictures of these B-17s from behind. I found a library photo taken from a tail gunner on a B-17 looking back at the fleet that was leaving the condensation trails. And Malcolm, I'll include that photo here now. It clearly shows that the condensation was coming off the tips of the propellers.
Oh, that photo you showed us. Yeah.
And it's spiraling around the engine as it's going backwards like a corkscrew. And as it gets off the back of the wing, it's all mixed together and it comes out looking like one solid trail.
It looks like solid wide trail.
Wide trail, but they were minute, narrow trails coming off the compression off the tips of the propellers.
And one very thin trail coming off the wingtip.
Off the wingtip.
Because that's just where the pressure is.
That's right. Now, when I showed that photo to Dane Wigington, he was clearly agitated. He didn't like it.
Disproved it.
It disproved his theory about the B-17s. Clearly it did, because there's no way they'd have a spray nozzle coming out of the tip of a propeller.
And a wingtip.
And a wingtip. So those photographs disprove. Other photographs on some of these sites. Angela Merkel and I think Macron or one of the French presidents standing inside an aircraft with all these tanks in it. People are saying there they are, they're really proud of themselves, they're getting ready for chemtrails. Let me tell you, I want to explain what that aeroplane is. I have been inside that aeroplane. I did part of my training for a new aircraft type in Toulouse in France where they made Airbuses. And we were touring the airport. I sat in a Concorde that they developed over
Oh
there.
man, that would be.
It was great. And we walked on board this aircraft because we were being shown the engineering standards used by Airbus to produce a top quality product.
Because Boeing dominated.
Boeing
And
dominated.
the Airbus from Europe was had to take over some of that market if it was going to
That's right.
survive.
No, and that's why Boeing's in the mess it is today, Malcolm, because they tried to catch up with Airbus and they took too many shortcuts to try and get market share back from Airbus. They took way too many shortcuts. That's why Boeing's in a real mess. Now, every new model of an aeroplane that comes out, and that one was an A330, a wide-bodied passenger jet with two big engines. Every new model that comes out, they produce about 6 prototype models which they use for testing. They never ever see airline service. They virtually test them to destruction to prove what their capabilities are, to understand their performance characteristics under different circumstances. The photo of Angela Merkel in an aeroplane fuselage with all the rows of tanks where the seats used to be, that's a test aircraft that was used to go up to test the handling characteristics of that aircraft at high altitude and its performance characteristics with differential weight forward and aft. In the old days,
So they'd shift the water around
through the
to
tank.
mimic different payload distributions.
That's it. In the old days, engineers used to go up on these test bed aircraft and they moved sandbags that weighed 77 kilos because that's the average weight of a human being back then. And when they do testing with certain seats occupied and some empty to test how much fuel the aeroplane burned with that configuration and balance and trim, how it performed at high altitude, whether it could do a 30, a 15-degree bank angle turn and not fall out of the sky, whether it met all its performance criteria that it could actually operate on a long-haul flight and get to the other end with the range capability. All this stuff has to be determined by testing, upper atmosphere testing.
To get the data.
To get the data. Here we get back to the data again. So it was dangerous for engineers to be in the sky 30,000 feet moving sandbags from one place to another, because there were a couple of instances where they got it wrong and the aeroplane crashed and everyone was killed. So they developed a way of putting stainless steel tanks, no, aluminium tanks, because they were lighter weight, in each row where the seats were, and they had a volume of water that mimicked the weight of a person in each tank. And when the engineers had done testing with, say, 2/3 of the aeroplane filled a certain way, then they would say, right, now let's trim the aeroplane so we've got most of the passengers sitting towards the back and a few at the front. And they transfer the water accordingly.
Just like pumps on board that the pilot would control.
Not the pilot, the aeronautical engineers, the test engineers would do that. And then the pilot would fly certain parameters given to him by the test engineers so they could record the data to give the performance criteria. No chemicals in those tanks, folks. It's just water.
And Angela Merkel and Macron and the other presidents from the European Union would have been on there as a publicity shot to say, see what we're doing to take the market back from Boeing to put European planes on the map.
Exactly.
That's exactly what they're doing.
I've seen photos of a jumbo jet at about 30,000 feet dropping this massive amount of water out from underneath it. People say, what's that? Well, the jet that was there was a 747 and it was in the old livery that it used to have before when it had its previous life, Evergreen. Evergreen was a freight operation out of Asia. Those aircraft, when they were sold or mothballed, were taken to companies that converted them to firefighting bomber aircraft, right? When they passed this certification, they were then painted red and white in the colours of the company that operated them. Before they could do that, they had to do certification trials to make sure that the new water dumping data for the firefighting worked correctly and that the aeroplane flew correctly and wasn't thrown out of trim when it dumped water. So they'd send this aeroplane up after all the modifications had been done before the paint job, send it up, they'd have a chase plane flying along filming it, and if anything happened, they could review the footage and see what happened if the plane didn't perform properly. And it would do this massive water dump to see how it performed when it had all this weight and then none. That's what that was about. But no. Some commentators paint a very different picture of that. That's
Sinister picture.
a sinister picture. So innocent pictures are being misconstrued deliberately to cause fear, to get people to panic about stuff that they need not be panicking about. I come back to what I said at the beginning. I believe that weather modification is a thing, but I believe we're terrified about things that are not what they seem to be to us.
Yep. Anything more you want to say?
No.
Well, I'll just finish off. I have 7 wonderful staff. They're very dedicated. We cover Parliament, research government legislation and other legislation. We do Senate estimates research. I'm the best prepared senator there because I've got such wonderful staff. We prepare speeches, which require a lot of research sometimes. We have to handle the media and prepare for that. We handle constituent issues for 5 million constituents across our state of Queensland, and sometimes more people outside Queensland. We remain open, sincerely, on receiving empirical scientific data and logical scientific points on chemtrails and weather modification. We have already researched it in Australia. We've investigated the issue and the claims that people send in photos, patents, and legislation. To maintain my integrity and my effectiveness, serving the people of Queensland and Australia, I ask people to please respect my need for solid evidence as proof of cause and effect. And Hoodie and I would both ask people to be careful about what you send, because you don't want to distract you, distract me and my staff, distract the constituents of Queensland and Australia on issues while the real bastards are tearing this country apart.
Yeah.
That's a very serious issue. Integrity is very, very important to me. I know it's important to Hoodie. You don't fly planes for 52 years without integrity, especially crop dusters. It's absolutely vital. And integrity in my business means having accurate facts and data. Accurate facts and data. We welcome inquiries, we welcome claims put to us in good faith. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you so much for participating, Hoodie.
It's been great having you here, Malcolm. Thanks for being here, and we've had a great weekend. And don't forget, Australia, what you did yesterday got you to today. Believe me, you can call me a Freemason, you can call me, a baby killer, whatever you like. It's not me, it's not who I am. I care about this country, and that means I care about you. And believe me, I'm not lying to you about what I know, and I can't pretend. Look, Malcolm, I know I'm extending this a little bit, but I've had a lot of people say to me, if you just admit that that was going on, you double your following. I don't want a following if I can't have that following based on truth, as I see it. It's all about integrity, and I would quite happily never have a following.
Same here. People say to me, if you stop doing this, I'll vote for you. That's not me. If you don't vote for me and I don't get back into the Senate because I don't comply with you, that's your business. My business is living with me, and I'll happily live with people like Hoodie, who also has his. The main person you have to satisfy, I know, is you. The main person I have to satisfy is me.
Yeah.
I've got to look myself in the mirror every day. I've got to treat myself with integrity and behave with integrity. Everything I do. That's what I always do. I promised it to the people of Queensland. I've been elected 3 times now, and I will continue to serve the people of Queensland and Australia truthfully. And when I don't know something, I'll admit it.
Exactly. And the various podcasters that have asked me for proof of what I've been saying, and I've sent it and they haven't looked at it. If you do as much research on the counter side of the argument as you do trying to prove a point that's unprovable, then maybe the world will be a better place. So don't argue with me unless you're prepared to look at what I send you. And if you're not prepared to do that, then you don't have any credibility in my books, because it's all about integrity.
So what do you always finish with?
Stay out of the trees. And it's a great country. If you love it, stand up for it.
Can I add something to that? Stay out of the weeds.
Stay out of the weeds. God bless you guys. It's been great having Malcolm here for the weekend with Christine, and let's try and get our country back as best we can with compassion and love. See you.
Yep.
See you later. Bye for now.